Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Hello, this is Angela, and I'm so happy you're joining us for another Connections live webinar with Dr. Ray and Jean. So what we'll talk about tonight is alienation and why it impacts your relationships. So let's say a big hello to Dr. Ray and Jean.
Hello. Hello, everybody at Couple Synergy. Thank you for joining us on our weekly webinar. This has been quite a journey, and I don't even know what week this is. Do you? How many weeks we've been doing this?
It's not like we're in lockdown or anything.
It's been quite a while. It's not like we're in lockdown or anything, or doing any live meditation or anything like that, or doing any skits. Thank you again, Angie, for always being a wonderful host every single week. And
host with the most.
Host with the mostest. Yes. And so thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And, if you have been watching our live webinar, it has transformed over a long period of time, right? We originally started with a little webcam, and we started like in the meditation room, and we started then also doing in front of our fish tank being in the background. And there's just been so many like variations. Every single week has just evolved over time. And then we had our good friends, Gabe and Myra at Mindflix Films, who helped us, came over and kind of coached us on how to do some, just better camera work, better lighting, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to thank you so much for joining us and kind of watching our transformation. So without further ado, today we are going to be talking about the topic of alienation, right? Alienation.
Yep.
Moving away, from someone. That's just kind of a general tense form. But before we do that, I want to do a little caveat. Okay. The term alienation was first brought up by Karl Marx, and he was talking about this alienation.
Not first. There was a day long before that.
Sure.
But it was big during that.
Well known is Karl Marx coming up with the term alienation and tying it with the working class and the upper class, and it has an association with socialism. We are not talking about that kind of alienation, nor are we talking about alienation syndrome, which has been coined.
It has a pretty dark history.
It has a very dark history and a very controversial one. And the person who coined that term is got some really shady kind of past to him. So we're not talking about that, nor are we talking about parental alienation, which is
a legal term,
something that the legal system and the court system has adopted as part of divorce proceedings. So we're not talking about any of that. All right.
I would say that alienation should be one of the 7 deadly sins. Well, that would make it 8.
That would be 8.
Yeah. And, alienation it's a fundamental thing about being a human being, to be part of a tribe and part of a group and part of a family and part of a community. And if you've ever been a parent of a child in middle school and your child was alienated and they had no one to sit with at lunch, is so painful. Or if you were that child, right? And you also see this with your dogs. If you walk in the house and you ignore your dog, the dog gets very anxious and acts out because its life depends on being part of the pack,
part of the
group.
tribe. Yeah.
Part of the tribe. And so at a very biological level, we experience alienation as a trauma. And we belong to a culture that is what we call the cancel culture.
Currently.
Right.
Currently. Yes.
That we think if we bump into something that's uncomfortable, cut it off.
Yeah.
Check out.
Yeah.
Be done with you.
And I would have to say,
with your head.
I would have to add to that and say that, the way that the culture has kind of evolved over time. Ooh, I don't like that camera angle. Anyway, how it's evolved over time into this cancel culture is that this in like eroding of the tribe and the community, right? And as the tribe and community has eroded, people have become much more isolated. And as they've become much more isolated, they have tended to kind of reject anything that has become a risk to their inner tribe.
And not just a risk, anything that's different. If you have a difference of opinion,
right.
If you have a difference, and we're also in a strange time that we're trying to be so inclusive and pretend there's no differences. Like there's no differences of opinions or race or whatever. They exist, they're all there. And instead of being accepting of the differences, we're trying to make everyone the same, which of course we cannot. And, the alienation is a really, the reason I really feel it's such a terrible thing is because it prevents you from growing. It prevents you from being exposed to things you're not necessarily a part of or comfortable with.
So maybe we should just kind of clarify here so that everyone can relate. If you've ever been cut out of someone's life because you said something to hurt them, or not intentionally, but said something that hurt them, or did something that hurt them, whether it be a sibling, whether it be a extended family member, whether it be a friend, anyone who has just said, boom, you're done. I'm done with you. I am not going to talk to you anymore. And they've just cut you out of their life. That is alienation, right? And as we're talking, if you've been, at the victim side of that, on the receiving end of that, just chat and say, I have. Okay. But that is what we're talking about here. Alienation is being rejected in a way by someone who you felt like you belonged with, right? A group that you belonged with. And that is totally something that is very prevalent. It's much more prevalent today in our culture than it ever has been, right? And as we've mentioned, it's that extinguishing of the community that has really kind of erupted into that.
So when you're looking at alienation, what we're really looking at is the person who is doing the shunning or the canceling.
And Myra has expressed that, yeah.
Is actually covering up shame. So shame is this emotion that we have that says, I don't belong. And so when someone feels shame and they're not aware of it or they're not tending to it, they're going to come back with blame. And so it can't be me, so it must be you. And if it's you, I'm going to hold myself at anger. And if I hold myself at anger, then I'm able to justify that I'm better and you're worse. And I don't have to tend to whatever hurt me to begin with, or whatever is coming up for healing, or whatever I might have done to experience shame. And so I'm gonna play hot potato with that and kind of throw it on you. And that's why it's such a horrible thing, because it blocks that growth that is so necessary. And I can't tell you how many times we've heard this, and someone will say, oh, we don't talk to that part of the family. We haven't in years. And well, what happened? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But we've turned them into all evil, all bad, and we are all right and all good.
Mm-hmm.
which I guarantee you is never the case,
Right.
ever. It's always something in the middle. And alienation it's not a clean break. When you are experiencing that, whether you're the person that's being shunned or the person doing the shunning, it feels like a black cloud. It feels like a heavy, thick black cloud because it's usually done by someone or a group of people that you care very much about.
Yeah.
You know, we have a person we know going through this. He's been part of a club for most of his adult life. Even I don't even think he was an adult when he joined this club. He's probably like a teenager. And suddenly there's been a shift and a different philosophy and a different belief or something. And they're shunning like this, the older people in this tribe, in this group. And I just watching him go through that, it's so painful. And
I'm stretching to remember who this is, just so you know. There's a lot. Okay, got it. All right.
and it's just, you can see whenever we see him and his wife, they just kind of have this heaviness to them and this sadness of something they've really invested a lot of time, energy, love, connection, all those things we talk about putting money in the bank account and filling up that relationship tank, only to have really a hatchet come and sever that for what really feels like nothing. And it really isn't anything.
Usually it's something really small.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just people start to take offense to it and they take it personally, and then it just grows and becomes this, it takes a life on its own. And then, you know, you just start to feel, and maybe some of you who have experienced this sense of alienation or being alienated from a tribe, right? A group that you belong to, whether it be family, whether it be friends or club, whatever that is. It is this sense of yuck. I don't know how else to explain it, right? But it's a yucky feeling. And, you know, it's just in the pit of your stomach. And whenever you come around them, you feel this like shadow coming in. Right.
I would even call it terror.
Oh, it's a horrible feeling. And you know, unfortunately, it's like the more darkness kind of encroaches upon this, the worse it gets.
Yeah, the more time
right
that is invested in the alienation, the more justification, the more the story grows, the more the story is told to where it really doesn't even take on any form of truth anymore. And the sad part is that it allows someone else to become this monster and someone else to become a saint, and it's not true. And whatever story we're telling becomes the other person's truth, sadly.
And Myra says it's a waste of time. It absolutely is. But it's more of a draining of energy, right? You just feel so sapped of your energy. And, you know, it starts to envelop your every moment. And sometimes it envelops your dreams, right? You start having nightmares. And you wake up and you're in the middle of it again. And you just feel this cloud all the time. You know, when you are being ostracized, that's really what's happening here in this alienation. And you know, as an aside, ostracization is actually a very powerful form of kind of control that was done back. I mean, when we're talking about tribal days, right? Tribal era, when human beings would come together in a group of probably about 100 or less. And in that tribe, you know, you would occupy, you know, a role. You know, you would maybe the blacksmith, or maybe you were the person who made clothes, whatever that was, you had a role. And if you stepped outside of the boundaries of that tribe and you did something that was against the tribe, they would use ostracization to get you back in line, right? You were given the silent treatment. You were separated from the tribe. You were told, in a way, and punished that you are not complying with the rules of the tribe. And so that's how the tribe kept everything safe.
That's what they do in the military. When you're going through basic training, they for sure use that tactic. And, for there, it kind of makes sense, because if someone within the group is acting out in a way that's not appropriate, they can actually get their entire platoon killed. So they make a habit of making sure that what happens to one happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that happens within the group of your platoon that you're in is you get mad at that person that messed up because they made us all suffer. And then the goal is actually to get that person to come back into line,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not really to alienate them, but it's a powerful emotion that you don't want to experience, that you will comply,
right,
in order to not feel those feelings. Yeah, absolutely.
And here's a question. How is alienation different from isolation? And is it in the case where alienation is something done to you and isolation is something that you could and usually do yourself?
That's a great question, Ange. And actually, you just explained the difference there, right? Alienation is being done to you versus isolation is, it could be a choice, right? My choice is that I'm going to isolate myself from people. I'm going to withdraw from other people because of the negativity or because of my own, worry or anxiety. But alienation, it's actually an attack, right? It's not something you're choosing, but you're being almost rejected.
I would talk about it from a little different perspective as well. Not anything that disputes anything you're saying, but you could be in a relationship where your partner is isolating you by getting you to alienate from people that are supportive of you, so they have more control over you. So that is a really
So that's a combo.
Yeah, that's a really
1-2 punch.
Dangerous combination if you're in a relationship like that. And so therefore you're isolating, but you're not the one that is necessarily against people, but you feel like kind of like in the middle of this tug of war between your partner and the other people in your life that care about you. And so the way to tend to that is you isolate by sort of alienating. Does that make sense? Did I say that right?
Yes, I would say it makes sense, but it's true. Like, that is confusing at the same time,
Right.
And it sounds really manipulative. Like, if that, for that relationship, the example you're giving that some people live, that does sound dangerous, scary, and very manipulative.
Yeah, and I would say that sometimes people use alienation. This is reminding me of being in 7th grade. And if you've ever been a girl in 7th grade, you probably either witnessed this or went through it yourself. And there was this one girl, and she would systematically alienate one girl at a time from the girl group. And I was not a part of it. I was on the outside of it. And those girls would become friends with me while they were alienated, and then not be friends with me when they went back to the group. And this is, people have eating disorders over this stuff and hurt themselves because they so much want to be accepted and approved of by their peer group. And it's a way to, the idea of, if you have a common enemy, you have a friend. And so they will rally around, we're all going to dislike this person, so that's going to secure our bond over here. And again, that is very manipulative, like you're talking about, and dangerous. And that's kind of the point. And that's teenagers or young teenagers. I mean, I think, what are you, 13 or 14 at that stage of life? And your mind is not developed. And of course, most of us got to our 30-year reunion. We're all friends again and went, well, that was stupid and silly. Why did I care if you didn't have the, I think it was Guess jeans at the time or whatever is the thing that you didn't
dating
have.
Yourself now. Wow.
I'm old, but it's very, very painful.
So, for guys, I think a really good example would be the story at Lord of the Flies, right? Where you have a group of boys who are stranded on an island, and you see alienation, come to light, where they start to, identify the weak part of the group, and they start to alienate him. and start to pick on him. And, and that's really just kind of the pack mentality, that men really function from, and you could see how alienation really comes to light there within that gender.
Yeah.
And one thing I would just want to add, Ray, when you're explaining the Lord of the Flies, right, there is a real life, and maybe more than one, but as far as I know, one study done a little while ago, because it got to a certain point where, maybe they'd say, oh, is it ethical? But do you remember that one, the real life? And to my knowledge, I just did a quick search.
You're not talking about the Zambrano prison experiment.
No, because this was with little boys, like with young kids, not college students. Robbers Cave, don't quote me on that. But where they actually did, it was this idea of like a camp of boys, and the idea was, can we pin this group against this group, and how do they act, right? If we tell them there is a difference and your objective is to be better. And they had to stop the experiment when one of the groups started putting rocks in socks to go and hurt the other group.
Yes, I do remember this study. Yes. So one of the things that's going to be highlighted by studies like this is that there is an instinctual part of this, right? We talked about ostracization, and that is actually a very powerful tool that was used within tribes, but it's instinctual. We have this drive within us to reject someone who is not complying with the common group, right? And so it's because it's coming from a place of safety and security. If someone goes around and they go around killing people in the group, that's not conducive to the survival of the group. And so they're going to be rejected from the group. The problem is that in our society today, the tribe and the small group doesn't exist anymore. And if we're to take a look at what our tribe is and has become, it has become the world. You're looking at society, you're looking at social media, and the way we're able...
5,000 likes. 5,000 views.
7 billion people on this planet. And how many people are we able to actually access online at a time, right? And so when we put our opinion out there, we are subjecting ourselves to so much more rejection and alienation and ostracization than we ever have been in a society.
What's interesting is that negative energy travels so much faster. And what we've noticed with things like Yelp reviews or Google reviews or reviews in general is that the people who feel something negative, they are more than willing to share that with the world. And all of the positive things that happen don't get shared so much. And so it's really tilted. And so when you give your opinion, the people who agree with you are much more or less likely to say that, even though they do feel it. And the people who are against you are much more likely to put that out there. So it's a very skewed thing. And I think that's part of what happens in the electronic world, technology, because you wouldn't do that if you were literally sitting around a table with someone.
Well, if you were sitting around a table with someone, you would have to learn conflict resolution skills. You would have to be able to understand a person's point of view. You would have to, learn about it. You wouldn't be completely rejecting already. You wouldn't be dismissing. You wouldn't be disrespectful. You would try to understand their point of view, first of all, before you started to, to argue with them about it. And even if you did argue, even if you came to a point where we're just going to agree to disagree, you would still have a feeling of respect for the other person because they have a point of view. But in today's day and age where we have this this sense of conflict avoidance, that we don't actually try to work things out. We don't try to really talk about it with the person, try to understand their perspective, even though we may not agree. We tend to just alienate first, right? And as we talked about alienation, or that instinctual feeling of rejecting someone that is not similar to you or doesn't have the same view as you, is instinctual. We are designed to evolve. As human beings, we have to grow. We have to become beyond what our instinctual level is, our animalistic self. And we have to start to learn how to really understand each other and have compassion for each other.
And this is, I think, a great follow-up question for you, Dr. Ray and Jean. Has this larger digital tribe damaged our ability to empathize? And if so, what can one do?
The digital
question.
world does not allow for, it's two-dimensional. You can see a person's image, but you can't feel what you would feel, what we call meta language, that happens when you're in the room with someone. So you can be in the room with someone and you can feel the emotion in the room. You can tell if someone's sad, if someone is angry, if someone's defensive, and you can tend to those things. But in the digital world, you cannot. In the digital world, you can make up your own narrative in your head of what's happening. And so you numb so empathy means I can identify this within myself, and therefore I can see it within you. And it's all done with meta language. It's the same thing our dogs do to know if we're sad or whatever. They don't respond to a TV.
They pick up on that energy.
Right. They don't respond to a TV like that. Our dogs never have.
No.
But in person, they do. In person, they'll go to someone if they feel that emotion. So you're right. You can't empathize.
Empathize.
Not emphasize.
Right.
Emphasize.
Empathize. Wrong.
And
emphasis on the wrong syllable.
And we get twisted up in our thinking. And that's the other thing that happens when you are around other people. You will hear the opinions of more than one person. In digital world, you're only hearing your own.
Yeah.
And you're hearing things that are there. The words can have different connotations and different meanings. And I'm so guilty of this because I have such poor grammar. People don't understand what I'm saying when it's the written language.
Well, to be fair, you have dyslexia, so
yes.
that.
And so it's something I can describe when I'm speaking. It does not come across at all like that when I'm writing.
Yes.
And you're always like, what did you try to say?
Right. It was a really great question, and it absolutely is true that the digital world, the digital tribe, I like that term, digital tribe, has damaged our ability to empathize. See, now you got me saying it wrong. Empathize, right? And the thing is that there's a reason why dogs do not get jealous if we are on our phone. Mm-hmm. They don't feel that. They don't feel the sapping of our energy to something else. But if we are holding on to a stuffed animal, a stuffed dog, they're going to get jealous. Right? They feel that energy because they're in that room. And the digital world is really skewing a lot of our ability to connect with other human beings and to really put ourselves in their shoes and to feel what they feel. We can sit behind the screens and we can judge without any consequences. If you were in a room with someone and you judged them, you had to deal with the consequences of the reaction. You would have to deal with the consequences of how it impacted them. Mm-hmm. Whether they were crying, whether they got angry, whatever that was,
walked away.
Whether they left, walked away, you would have to deal with the consequences of that. But in our veil, our black mirror, our screens, we can say whatever we want. And we don't have to deal with how it impacts other people.
The responsibility
of that. And so because of that, alienation has a place to thrive.
And anyone that would love to be in a position of power will be very happy if you are feeling like alienating other people who are not in agreement with whatever your philosophy is, because there's that concept that united we stand and divided we fall. And if we can get divided, then we have no power. And that's what I think a lot of people feel in that isolation and in that fear of speaking out about anything, is they're going to be rejected or alienated. And so they just stay quiet, and then we really can't know. Recently, talk about social media. I don't know if you know, but it was like Dog Day, right? Like a week ago.
Yeah.
And I changed a picture to our dog, and everyone thought she passed away. And she is close, and it's a really difficult thing that our family's going through right now. So people who know us know that we're struggling with this, but someone just assumed, oh, sorry for your loss. And like, oh, she's still here.
Right.
And he was like, why did you put a picture? Everyone knows that means that. And I'm like, I didn't know it meant that. It was Dog Day. Like I can't communicate in that, like emojis. I don't know what emojis mean. Like I see a thing and they're like, do you know what that meant? And I'm like, I don't know. It looked like a smiley face to me. Well, it meant like I'm grinning in anxiety or something. I don't know. So those I don't know that language, the emoji language either. And so it's so easy for me to give out the wrong message on social media.
I think that this comment right here about misconstrued is a really great term, because that's exactly what you're talking about here, right? Is that our language can be misconstrued, right? And that, here's the thing with written word, there's no context, right? And the majority of our communication is in written word, text, instant messaging, just writing, just like this, right? Just writing on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. The text is our major form of communication now, and there's nothing that can be conveyed when you're in the room with someone and you feel that energy, right? And you're able to really truly know who that person is. And so we get offended so much easier now. We take things personally a lot easier now because we can't communicate. Our communication has been actually limited so much.
And the digital world is so much faster than real world that we're not used to. I mean, you start scrolling.
Our brain's not designed to deal with it right now.
We just went to a networking group with like 30 people.
Right.
Might have been there. And we probably talked to 5. You could scroll on your screen like 100 people in a couple of minutes. We were there like an hour and a half and could only talk really to like 5 people. That's the pace that we're used to. And that quickness is another part of like, oh, that's moved on, that's gone, that I can't get back to that. I'm just going to move on. And because of that, we're in shock.
This just came to my mind. If you went to a networking event or went to a party and you interacted with each person the way you interact on social media, you can only imagine be like, hi, how are you doing? What's you doing? What's your political stance? Okay, bye. And you went from one person to the other. Like you do scrolling on social media, you would never have any depth in any of your relationships.
And you would be like, oh, I don't agree with you. Bye. And
exactly.
You would cancel culture, right? Boom. And so that's another reason there's no resolution. There's no humanity.
Yeah.
And, my favorite example of this is, Grumpy Old Men. Again, I'm dating myself, but it's an older movie. And who was in that? I don't remember the name.
I don't remember the actors.
Anyways, it's these 2 old men that live next to each other their entire lives. And they have this long-standing hate, battle, conflict, love, hate. And they always end up there for each other in a time of need because That's what you really do with human beings. With real people, you take care of each other. And with people who you are digital with, you just are trying to survive yourself in that realm, that you no longer see other people as really as human.
You're just looking to take.
Mm-hmm.
And just for your information, Grumpy Old Men, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau.
Thank you.
And I remember that movie as well.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was thinking, sorry, my pup is on my lap right now, is, you know, when someone says something that could be offensive, a comment, a hurtful comment to you, to your face, you might feel a certain way. But I think it sort of explodes and your emotion might be higher and your anxiety might be higher when a comment like that is said on social media, because it's not just my feelings I have to worry about. I would say a lot of people worry about everybody else seeing it, because that's what happens,
Like
right?
humiliation on top
It's
of it.
like and I remember, Jean, something you've said in the past is, if you post something on Facebook, for example, remember, it's not just like you're yelling in your own house. You're yelling it in your parents' house, and you might be yelling it in your grandma's house, and you're yelling it in the house of their coworker from 10 years ago, right? And the people you went to high school with, and somebody who lives down the block. It's like it just keeps going and going and going. Mm-hmm. And for me, there's fear in that. Where is it going to end up?
Yeah.
It's as if you are standing on a stage in an auditorium and every single person in the auditorium are all on your friends list. And if you thought about doing that, how many people would be saying the things that they do? I can say that I absolutely, have done that before myself, right? Have made the mistake of saying something and not really understanding the ramifications of that, right? And being also at the end of ostracization or alienating someone because of a thought or because of a disagreeing thought that we had. Mm-hmm. It is so easy for us to do it. That's just it. And we're not really aware so much because things are moving so quickly, but they're moving incrementally, right? To the point that we can't really tell that this shift is happening so quickly. You think about like in how long has it been since we were able to drive in a car and no one could contact us? Like not so long ago. Mm-hmm. Not so long ago.
We were married before we ever had cell phones.
Right. You could drive in a car. You go from one place
to
another.
We were married before we had computers.
And no one could contact you.
And it was only a really fancy thing if there was a built-in phone in the car.
You had a brick.
Did
you
exist.
Had a phone this big.
But they make cars with the phone in the car. Like a business, right. That your business. Like I remember that, and that was 20 years, a little less than 20 years ago. Yeah. But like that was a rare thing. So that was one of the first moments that you could be contacted. And sure, I mean the big cell phones, right, which were around probably right before then too.
Yeah. Who out there had a big brick phone? I did. Don't make us be really old.
You had a pager too.
I had a pager. How about that? That pager too. Then you had to go to a payphone.
I would say the car is another great example of alienation, because when you're in a car, you don't see when someone cuts you off, when there's bad drivers out there, and when you're the bad driver, you don't know you're doing it, and you don't feel like you would not be in the mall and walk past someone and they bump into your shoulder and you'd be like, but in your car, you name call and you swear and you yell. And it's like all of a sudden you give yourself this license to be so much angrier because I mean, technically it's a life-threatening event if somebody drives poorly, but we don't see the other driver as human. We see the car and we just think that person's literally pointing a gun at us or something.
They're wrong. And that's the thing. Alienation is about judging someone as being wrong.
All wrong.
All wrong.
All bad,
and that
no good.
You are right.
Mm-hmm.
That what you are saying, what you are doing is right. They are wrong. And, there's so much in our society today that reinforces that. That reinforces alienation, reinforces us and giving us reason to alienate someone.
And there's nowhere to challenge that.
No.
And so, there's a beautiful statement that says, you can be right or you can be kind. And when we have to deal with real people, we tend to be kind. The nature of a human being is to be kind and is to be generous and is to be caring and is to be empathetic.
Empathetic. No, empathetic. You got it.
That's in our nature, because ultimately all is one. When we take care of each other, we know that at some point we're going to need help as well.
Yeah. And
so we don't want to be in the position of needing that help and everyone going, well, when I needed help, you said, screw you, so I'm not going to help you. And so that's really in our nature. And we've gotten so big that we kind of lose some of that. And you just think about that right now in this moment. How many people did you personally interact with today in real life where you could touch them if they let you, because it's COVID?
Yeah.
And how many people did you interact with on a screen? And, COVID made that exponential, that we have these interactions like that. And even just picking up the telephone and hearing someone's voice, you get so much more of the meta language that you just can't get.
So I love that you brought that up, because what COVID has done has brought us a wonderful opportunity, an opportunity to really take a look at what is really important in our lives, right? And that those disconnections that we have had, we have an opportunity to reconnect. We have an opportunity to really start to, mend those wounds and distances that have been created.
Yeah. Can you follow up with this great question? Any thoughts or suggestions for how to deal with wanting to contact the person who might not want to contact with you?
Dennis, this is an awesome question. Thank you so much for bringing this up, because it brings up a lot of angst, right? So you want to connect with someone. There's someone who, for whatever reason, there has been this alienation that has occurred, and they're shunning you, or they're ignoring you, giving you a silent treatment, and it is so painful. It's gut-wrenching, painful.
I would say to make sure you have the right agenda if you're going to attempt to contact them, because there's a really good chance who you are and who they think you are very, very different. And when they get this idea in their head of who they think you are, anything you say will just add to their story. And you're putting yourself sort of in harm's way by attempting to contact that person. And so if you're going to do that, make sure that you're doing it because you're looking for your own form of resolution.
Yes.
I had this at a job where the partner I worked with was, she really, really didn't like me. And to me, she was kind of an unsafe person where she wasn't really doing her job, and she was really mad at me for shining for doing my job. And ultimately they ended up moving her out of that position because, she wasn't even seeing her clients. And before they did that, our boss totally was on her side, she's the underdog and I'm a bully or something. And they had this whole agenda. And ultimately at some point I just quit because I was like, I'm not dealing with this. And then when they said, don't quit and we'll change partners out and we'll give her a different job over here, I said, okay, I want to meet with her, but I want EAP. What is
EAP.
EAP. What does that stand for?
Employment Assistance Program.
Yeah, it's like a therapist that comes in and mediates or something. And I wanted another person in the room because I knew it wasn't safe for me to have this conversation with her without a witness and someone that would, make sure what I was saying was very clear. And all I said to her was, if I've ever hurt you, I'm sorry. And I care about you as a human being. And I wanted finished business with her. Now, I'm sure she didn't receive that very well or soften inside of herself, but I had closure, and that's what I was looking for.
I think that's a really good kind of point to bring up. And, for Dennis, I would to kind of follow that up, I would say that, whatever contact that you are going to attempt, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to let go of any expectation of what you want to receive back, because you don't have control over that. We don't have control of how other people are going to respond to us. We only have control of what we present. And if we are presenting compassion, if we're presenting an open-armed, type of approach for people, then we cannot expect the other person to be open-armed as well, right?
And I would offer that you pray, that you bless. And to bless someone means to hold them in the light for greater understanding. It doesn't mean to condone. It doesn't mean to forgive. It just means hold them in the light for greater understanding.
Right.
And that softens something within you, because that hard energy, when pain becomes hardened, it becomes hate. When we have hate, we get cancer and we get bad things in us, because it's such a heavy, dark energy that we are supposed to resolve, not carry with us. And when you pray for someone, you end up making them human again. And you end up seeing that they are an imperfect person, just like you are. And the greater thing that it does is, and this is the prayer of St. Francis that says, let me seek not to be understood, but to understand. And when you pray for someone or you bless someone, you get the understanding. You get the understanding like, oh, they may have taken that wrong, or maybe they're hurting about something else. And whatever that isn't mine. And so I don't have to carry that anymore. And so I know it sounds kind of maybe a little simplistic or fluffy, but sometimes it's all we have. And you'd be surprised how much soothing you can get from softening into that and offering a blessing to another person, especially a person who has shunned you, alienated you.
Ultimately, when it comes to alienation, we don't want to have any regrets, right? And if you're doing the alienating, or if you've been alienated, any type of interaction you want to have with the other person, you don't want to look in the mirror and regret what you've said, what you've done. You don't want to regret any of that interaction. Mm-hmm. And so if you are being alienated and you try to connect with that person with compassion, you can walk away and say, I don't regret what I've done. I don't regret who I am and how I'm trying to connect with this person. If you are being the person, or you're doing the alienating, and you stop that, and you try to connect, and you try to make amends, and you try to reconnect with that person, and the person rejects you, or the person is defensive, you can at least look in the mirror and say, I don't regret what I've done. I don't regret what I've said. And that's really ultimately what we have control of, is whether we move through life carrying this bag of regrets with us, or whether we can make sure that the next choice that we make is something that isn't going to create a regret.
If you consider right now that someone came up to you and snapped you with a rubber band, And, that's a shocking sting of pain, right? The emotion that goes with that is shame. For whatever reason, pain and shame are the same thing. So first they're going to feel pain, and then they're going to feel shame. And that's why they're going to retaliate against you. Even if they love you, they're going to be like, what? And so everyone who alienates another person is in shame, is in pain. Only a person in pain hurts another person. And so this idea of seeing them as human and in pain, and not as, oh my God, they're this all-knowing monster in my life. You have to keep them human size. And human size goes, oh, they're hurting. In the same way, if a person is got a broken leg and they're hurting and they have a little edge to them, you would give them a little space. Oh, they're in pain. It's they don't mean what they're saying. The same thing is true with this, and it's just hard, yucky stuff. And that's why we see this a lot in divorcing couples who really want to turn their ex into this monster, and they want everyone else to agree with that.
Even the kids. Right. And so, it's that pain that's being projected out because holding on to that pain is very uncomfortable. Yeah. So we have to project it out onto someone else. Right. And regardless of whether it's, a couple that's divorcing or whether it's within, an intact couple who's just, they're trying to alienate the other person because they've been hurt, or within a family, within friendships, it is always this manifestation of the pain within that has to get out, and we are going to throw it upon the people that are closest to us. Okay. And so we all have to take a look at ourselves. We all have to be able to look in the mirror and be able to, like what we see and who we are and how we're acting and how we're being.
So, Ange, is this a good time to meditate?
Yes, it's wonderful. We've got, about 8 minutes left, but if it goes a little longer. Yeah, okay. And I was just thinking the topic for next week, one thing that you might consider choosing from is something you've just touched base on about how sometimes during separation or divorce, parents will make their children the mediators in their relationship. And then children tend to grow up as adults, and that can be hard. They're either mediators their whole life, or they don't want to touch anyone else's emotions. So I think that might be, I would love to hear more about that topic.
That's a very big one because, the leading family structure in the United States is the blended family, which means that there are a lot of divorced families out there. And so there are a lot of kids that have grown up, being in that position. And it is a really big topic, and you are absolutely, on target with that. It's a very good one to talk about.
And I see that last question from Brad. Can you give an example of prayer, which is what meditation is, which is what we are going to do right now.
Bless and release.
Yes.
How to bless and release. Yeah.
So go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to bring your attention to the center of your chest. In the center of your chest is your thymus gland. And the thymus gland is sort of shaped like a butterfly. And it's what we consider your high heart center and the place where your soul enters your body. And see that as a glowing green energy. And see that energy taking the form of a rosebud. And inside that rosebud, hold in there any people or situations which are troubling you. And as you breathe, allow the rose to begin to open. And notice what color's inside, what color your rose is. and see the green tinge on the outside of the rosebud and the petals starting to form. And if the rosebud was very tight, allow it to be more comfortable and open. And if it's too loose and too open and no boundaries, allow it to have more sustenance. And just hold in the center of the rose the people and situations which are painful, which need more understanding. Don't pursue logic, reasons, or outcomes. Just hold them in the center. And I want you to imagine that deep inside, in the very center of the rose, is a light beginning to illuminate. And this light grows until it completely circles all the way around this rose. And this is what we mean by bless. And bless the people and the situations which are troubling you. Allow them to be in this light of illumination for greater understanding without pursuing logic, reasons, or outcomes. This does not mean to condone or forgive. Just hold them in the light. And allow yourself to be the observer. See that ball of light with the rose inside. And inside the rose, the people and situations which are troubling you. And as you observe that, know that the first spiritual truth is all is one. And that in each and every person or situation has its own rose and its own pain and its own lack of understanding. And allow yourself to hold that truth that if one of us is suffering, all of us are suffering. And as you offer this blessing to those that have hurt you, those who have judged you unfairly, who no longer see you and your reality, but have created an image of you and a story surrounding that it only comes from their own pain. And make a vow to yourself to work on releasing your pain so that you can minimize any damage that you might cause another because you can't see them through your pain. And bring your awareness back inside of the rose. And feel the potential inside the light of peace, and know that the only thing you have control over is keeping the door open. Even if on the other side a door has been closed to you, know that if your door is open, and one day they choose to open their door, you'll be waiting to welcome them back into your life. And allow the light in the rose to fold back down, to a comfortable place in the center of your chest. And maybe you feel just a little bit more comfort and a little less pain and a little more empathy and compassion as we all tend to our own humanness, as we all walk on the same earth. And say a short prayer of gratitude for your healing. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes.
Well, that is a great example of a prayer, right? And a prayer that you can say to kind of release yourself from that web of alienation.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much. This is a really awesome topic. Thank you, all of you who have participated and asked questions. Myra, Rhino, Dennis, Brad, thank you so much.
Joel.
Yes, Joe, Rhino.
All right, take care.
Thank you so
Bring
much.
your
and
suggestions.
we
It's
will
awesome.
Definitely. And, Ange, it was a great suggestion on a topic next time. I think that absolutely is going to, be the topic for next time. Give you a heads up on putting that topic out there.
Kids in the middle of divorcing
the tug of war.
parents.
Right?
Yeah.
Kids in the tug of war. Hey, Gabe, thanks for joining us. So
have a great week.
Yeah, and for all of those out there that are still interested in joining us on the weekend intensive, we still have some spots open. So get on that. Get on that.
It's gonna be awesome. I'm so excited.
If you need the link, let us know. I'm looking forward to that to the dinner dance on Saturday.
I'm looking forward
Black
to
tie,
dealing directly
live
with people
music.
and not just a screen.
Yeah, that's true.
And seeing that and being around that energy,
Right.
and being able to feel the meta language and being around people.
No more alienation.
No. Have a great week.
Until next time, synergize your life
and
and synergize your love.